My mother did not simply throw me out of her house. She ordered a 12-foot banner so the whole neighborhood could celebrate it. Goodbye. Freeloader adulting starts. Now stretched across the garage where my late father used to teach me how to change a tire. My uncle handed out paper plates with "last free meal" written across them in black marker. My younger brother live-streamed the barbecue and introduced me as the 31-year-old tenant who finally stopped paying rent with excuses. Someone threw a hamburger bun at my car before I had even opened the door. My mother stood beside the grill in white linen pants, smiling as though public humiliation were a form of courageous parenting. When I carried the final box from my old bedroom, she raised her glass and announced, "Maybe now Audrey will learn that families are not obligated to finance her forever." Everybody applauded. Nobody in that yard knew I had paid the past due mortgage that kept them in the house, covered the bills that kept my mother's wedding venue operating, and spent 3 years quietly preventing my brother's Christmas wedding from collapsing before invitations were even mailed. I took one photograph of the banner, the laughing faces, and my mother holding her wine beneath the word "Freeloader." Then I drove away without explaining myself. 12 days later, my mother left a voicemail saying, "Whatever point you're trying to make, you've made it. Please turn everything back on before Logan's wedding is destroyed." By Thanksgiving, she would invite 27 relatives to dinner, slide a typed apology across the table, and demand that I sign it so her clients, my brother's fiancé, and the entire town would continue believing she had rescued me instead of the other way around. My name is Audrey Hale. I was 31 years old when my family held the barbecue, and I had spent most of my life being praised for how little care I required. We lived outside Franklin, Tennessee, in a 2-story brick house with black shutters, an oak tree in the front yard, and a kitchen my mother remodeled twice while claiming she could not afford to repay me. My father, Michael Hale, died 7 years earlier after a sudden heart attack. Before his death, he had been a high school shop teacher who fixed everything slowly, carefully, and with the irritating belief that instructions mattered. My mother, Deborah, called him overly cautious. I called him the only adult in our house who noticed when somebody was carrying too much. Dad used to find me doing homework at midnight after helping my younger brother Logan finish a science project he had ignored for 3 weeks. He would close Logan's poster board, hand it back to him, and say, "Your sister is not the emergency department for decisions you made on purpose." Mom hated that sentence. After Dad died, it disappeared from the family vocabulary. Logan was 28 during the barbecue. Handsome, loud, socially effortless, and permanently described as one opportunity away from becoming extraordinary. He had inherited Dad's dark hair and none of his patience. Teachers called him charismatic. Coaches called him a natural leader. Mom called him her miracle because his birth followed 2 miscarriages. I was 3 years older, and apparently arrived too easily to become miraculous. My mother never said she loved Logan more. She said he needed more encouragement. She said boys matured later. She said rejection affected him deeply. She said my independence was a gift. When Logan failed 2 college semesters, Mom organized a family meeting about supporting his confidence. When I graduated with honors while working 25 hours a week, she arrived late because Logan needed help preparing for a job interview. He did not get the job. Mom posted 6 photographs of him in the suit. She posted one photograph from my graduation, the back of my cap, while I walked away from the camera with the caption, "Both my children are finding their own paths." Logan's path was always lit, photographed, and cleared of obstacles. Mine was respected mostly because nobody had to walk it with me. My Uncle Gary was my mother's older brother, and the loudest believer in family loyalty whenever loyalty meant someone else cleaning up his mistakes. He did delivery work, minor repairs, and occasional setup jobs for my mother's business. He was dependable until he started drinking, which usually happened by Thursday afternoon. Every missed delivery had a reason. Every damaged rental item had been poorly designed. Every angry client misunderstood his sense of humor. Mom defended him because he had been through a lot, a phrase that covered 2 divorces, several job losses, and decades of refusing help that required behavioral change. My grandmother Marjorie lived 15 minutes away and believed keeping a family together was more important than asking what the family was being kept together around. She softened Gary's drinking into loneliness, Logan's entitlement into confidence, and Mom's cruelty into stress. Whenever I objected, Grandma reminded me that women who kept lists became bitter and that daughters should not embarrass their mothers. I eventually learned people who benefit from your silence often describe accuracy as bitterness. The business at the center of everything was called Magnolia House Weddings. My parents had purchased an old horse farm 20 years earlier and gradually turned the main barn, garden, and farmhouse into a popular wedding and event venue. At first, it had been Dad's dream as much as Mom's. He repaired the barn, built the ceremony arbor, installed drainage beneath the lawn, restored old tables, and created a workshop inside a converted equipment shed. Mom handled brides, vendors, social media, and the polished language that made couples believe their wedding would be the only one Magnolia House had ever hosted. Together, they worked. Dad understood structures. Mom understood appearances. After he died, Mom inherited the entire operation emotionally, if not formally, and decided presentation could substitute for systems. She added floral rentals, decor packages, custom linens, an outdoor bar, bridal brunches, and holiday parties. She hired people based on whether she liked them and fired them when they asked for clear responsibilities. Deposits went into one account while vendor bills came from another. Furniture was promised to 2 weddings on the same weekend. Insurance renewals disappeared beneath bridal magazines. Staff schedules lived in text chains. The venue looked beautiful in photographs because dozens of people were exhausted outside the frame. I worked remotely as an operations consultant for hospitality businesses. My clients included boutique hotels, restaurants, short-term rental companies, wedding planners, and regional event groups. I organized vendor systems, reviewed service terms, built scheduling processes, tracked compliance deadlines, repaired client communication, and helped owners understand why a profitable-looking business could still run out of money every Friday. It was not glamorous work. There were no flower walls or champagne photographs, but it paid well because chaos becomes expensive once strangers stop volunteering to absorb it. I moved back into my mother's house 3 years before the barbecue, after my apartment building in Nashville was sold, and the new owner raised rent nearly 40%. My original plan was to stay 4 months, save for a down payment, and help Mom transition through a difficult wedding season after her venue coordinator quit. Mom described the arrangement differently from the beginning. At church, she said I had come home to regroup. On Facebook, she wrote, "No matter how old they get, sometimes your children still need their mama." I saw the post while transferring $8,000 to cover a venue insurance premium she had forgotten. I told myself the public story did not matter, because the private truth was known. That was my first mistake. A lie repeated publicly eventually becomes the version everyone feels entitled to defend. During the first month, I paid Mom $800 toward household expenses. She said formal rent felt unfriendly and asked me to help naturally instead. Naturally meant buying groceries without discussing it, paying the water bill when she forgot, replacing the washing machine, covering property tax installments during slow months, and becoming available whenever Magnolia House developed another emergency. I worked from Dad's old study, the room with built-in shelves and a window overlooking the oak tree. Mom called it Audrey's little office in a voice that made my career sound like a hobby requiring adult supervision. If she walked past at 11 in the morning and saw me reading quietly, she joked that remote work looked relaxing. She never noticed that I was reading a 40-page vendor agreement or troubleshooting a hotel procurement system across 3 states. Then, at 11:30 that night, she would stand in the doorway wearing a robe and whisper, "I know you're probably playing around on your computer, but could you fix one tiny thing for me?" The tiny thing might be a missing alcohol permit for a Saturday wedding, an angry florist threatening to pull out, an overbooked bridal suite, or a caterer demanding payment before unloading. I helped because Magnolia House still felt connected to Dad. His tools remained in the workshop. His pencil marks remained beneath the barn stairs. The porch swing where he used to drink coffee still faced the lower field. Every time I repaired the business, I told myself I was protecting something he had built. What I did not admit was that I was also protecting Mom from having to acknowledge how much of his competence she had dismissed while he was alive. The first year, my help was occasional. By the second, I had become the invisible operations director without title, salary, or authority. I rebuilt the booking calendar after two couples discovered they had been promised the same September date. I created a deposit tracker that prevented Mom from spending future event money on current emergencies. I negotiated payment plans with linen suppliers. I found a new insurance broker after Gary damaged a delivery truck and failed to report it for 6 days. I trained the venue assistant Mom hired because she liked the woman's energy, but had never asked whether she understood scheduling. I responded to bridal emails Mom considered overly demanding, which usually meant the bride had asked for something already included in the agreement. I rewrote Mom's replies before she could send phrases like, "Maybe choose a cheaper wedding if this is too stressful." I paid some expenses too. Not because I enjoyed financing the business, but because the emergencies always came with people attached. A cook who would not receive her paycheck. A bride whose rental company would not deliver without the balance. A maintenance worker whose family relied on Friday wages. Mom knew which stories would make me say yes. The staff should not suffer because business is slow. This couple has saved for 2 years. Your father would never let the barn lose insurance. Dad became a lever she pulled whenever ordinary guilt seemed insufficient. Over 36 months, I covered a refrigeration repair, insurance premiums, 2 software renewals, utility shortages, fuel, replacement linens, payroll gaps, property taxes, pest treatment, and part of the mortgage after Mom refinanced to expand the bridal suite. Some payments were repaid partially. Most became absorbed into the phrase, "Family helps family." Logan benefited separately. He worked for a home builder in sales but wanted to become a luxury wedding and lifestyle content creator. He began using Magnolia House as his stage. Couples saw him filming beside ceremony setups and assumed he worked there. He posted videos titled, "How We Create a Six-Figure Wedding Experience," despite never having managed a wedding or seen the venue accounts. Mom loved the exposure. She called him Director of Guest Experience, a title he printed on cards before anyone described the job. His actual responsibilities included greeting vendors when he arrived on time, filming drone footage, and disappearing before cleanup. When mistakes happened, he blamed staff. When a reel performed well, he thanked Mom for trusting his vision. I designed his first pricing guide after he texted, "You understand the boring parts." He promised to pay me when his first brand deal closed. It closed. He bought a watch. When I asked about payment, he said, "Seriously? I thought siblings supported each other." Logan became engaged to Samantha Pierce 18 months before the barbecue. Samantha was 29, worked as a physical therapist, and came from a family in Lexington that treated direct questions as ordinary rather than hostile. Her parents, Mark and Julie, were warm, organized, and careful with money. Samantha loved Magnolia House but did not fully understand its finances. Logan told her he had invested heavily in expanding the venue and would eventually inherit it. Neither statement was true. Mom never corrected him because the story made him look established. Their wedding was scheduled for the Saturday before Christmas, the most expensive and complicated event Magnolia House had ever attempted. Heated clear-top tent, candlelit barn ceremony, custom velvet linens, imported flowers, live band, private bourbon tasting, 3 days of events. Samantha's family agreed to contribute a specific amount and repeatedly asked for a complete budget. Mom said numbers were being finalized. Logan said sponsors would reduce several costs. In reality, the wedding had become another emergency moving toward me. Mom asked me to review every vendor plan. Logan sent me invoices with "thoughts" written above them. Samantha asked whether I was part of the wedding party. Before I answered, Mom said, Audrey is more valuable behind the scenes. I was not maid of honor. That role went to Samantha's sister. I was not a bridesmaid. Logan said even numbers looked better in photographs. I was not included in the rehearsal dinner planning because the guest count was already getting out of control. Yet Mom expected me to manage vendor arrivals, create backup weather plans, supervise decor transitions, monitor transportation, coordinate the ceremony timeline, and remain reachable throughout the honeymoon in case invoices appeared. You are the only person I trust to keep everything smooth, she said. Will I be seated with the family? She looked surprised by the question. You'll probably be moving around. So I'm staff. Don't reduce your role. You're his sister. What does being his sister provide besides unpaid responsibility? Mom's face hardened. That attitude is exactly why relationships have been difficult for you. She knew where to aim. 2 years earlier, I had ended an engagement after learning my fiancé was carrying on an emotional affair with a coworker. My family treated the breakup like confirmation that I was too rigid. Mom said every marriage required forgiveness. Logan joked that I had replaced romance with spreadsheets. The wedding exclusion reopened a wound they already knew how to use. I'm not discussing my relationship, I said. Then stop acting like helping your brother is an employment negotiation. I should have refused immediately. Instead, I continued helping while resentment grew, because some part of me still believed if I made Logan's wedding flawless, the family would finally understand what I contributed. That hope was humiliating but real. People do not remain in unequal families because they enjoy exploitation. They remain because every new crisis offers another chance to earn the love that should have been offered before usefulness. My mother decided to remove me from the house after I said no to one expense. The heated tent company required a $22,000 deposit. Samantha's parents had already transferred their agreed contribution. Logan claimed a brand sponsor would cover half, but the sponsor had never signed anything. Mom asked me to place the deposit on my business card for 48 hours. I asked where repayment would come from. She said future venue bookings. I explained that those deposits already supported future events and could not safely be used. She accused me of making simple things complicated. Logan said, "You know I'm good for it." I asked him to show me $13,000 of available funds. He called me jealous of his wedding. Mom cried and said Dad would be ashamed that I was willing to ruin Logan's marriage over timing. I left the kitchen rather than respond. The next morning, Mom entered Dad's study while I was speaking to a client. She stood behind my laptop until I ended the call. Then she said, "You need to move out by Saturday." No discussion. No warning. Why? Because this arrangement has become unhealthy. Which arrangement? You living here, criticizing everything, acting like money gives you authority over this family. I declined to lend $13,000. You are keeping score. I am protecting my credit. You're 31, Audrey. You should not still be working from your mother's house and judging how she manages her business. I looked around Dad's study. I pay household expenses. Not rent. You asked me not to call it rent. Exactly, because I was trying to preserve your dignity. The rewriting happened while I watched. How much do you believe I contribute? Some groceries. A bill here and there. Typing. Typing? Do not make me list everything I've done for you since you were born. Parenthood as a debt instrument. Do you want me gone, or do you want everyone to watch me leave? Her expression changed. A small smile. Maybe watching will help the lesson stick. That sentence removed the last guilt from my decision. I had already signed a year-long consulting agreement with a boutique hotel group based in Charlotte. I had already been considering moving because the client wanted more in-person work. That afternoon, I applied for a one-bedroom apartment outside the city. By evening, I had paid the deposit. I told nobody. Over the next 3 days, I moved most of my belongings quietly. Serena, my closest friend, drove up from Charlotte with an empty SUV. We packed files, clothing, kitchen items I had purchased, Dad's old toolbox, photographs, my office monitor, and the ceramic bowl he made during a teacher workshop when I was 12. I left furniture that belonged to the house. I left nothing they could later describe as abandoned except one box of books in the mudroom because Mom said movers were not allowed inside Saturday morning. Friday night, I removed my personal payment methods from every Magnolia House system. I transferred administrative access back to Mom and the venue assistant. I created a concise handoff document listing insurance renewal dates, software logins, unpaid vendor balances, upcoming staffing needs, and risks requiring attention. I did not delete files. I did not cancel weddings. I did not damage equipment or contact clients. I simply stopped being the invisible person who prevented every unfinished task from becoming a visible consequence. At midnight, I logged out. Saturday afternoon, I returned for the last box and found the banner. Cars lined both sides of the street. Music played. Smoke drifted above the oak tree. Mom had invited Gary, Grandma Marjorie, cousins, neighbors, several venue employees, 2 church friends, and even a local photographer who often worked Magnolia House weddings. A folding table held burgers, potato salad, baked beans, and a sheet cake decorated with a tiny suitcase. Someone had written "Freedom for Deborah" in blue icing. Logan stood near the cooler filming vertical video. "She's here," he announced when my car stopped. Uncle Gary raised a beer. The guest of honor finally arrived. A hamburger bun hit the passenger door and rolled beneath the car. Logan laughed. "Your last free meal." Children from next door laughed because adults had told them this was funny. Mom stepped from beside the grill, gold hoops flashing, arms spread. "Look who came to collect the rest of her office equipment." "My belongings," I said. The crowd quieted briefly, disappointed by the lack of tears. Mom lifted her glass. "Audrey, we wish you independence, humility, and the courage to build a real life outside your mother's home." Some people clapped. Grandma Marjorie said, "This is tough love, honey." Gary shouted, "Your father would have carried you out himself." That was the sentence that hurt. Dad had spent his life teaching us that help without responsibility created dependence. He also taught us that cruelty was not discipline simply because an adult delivered it. Gary knew that. He invoked Dad because grief remained the one weapon everyone believed could still make me kneel. Logan aimed his phone at my face. "Any final words from the former tenant?" I looked at Mom. She was smiling. Not nervously, triumphantly. She wanted tears because tears would prove I needed her. I walked into the house. Dad's study was already rearranged. Logan's ring light stood where my desk had been. A framed photograph of him and Samantha occupied the shelf that once held Dad's engineering books. Mom had placed my last box in the mudroom beneath a grocery bag labeled starter kit. Inside were instant noodles, paper towels, cheap dish soap, and a printed list titled "Entry-Level Jobs for People Who Need Structure." My career paid more than Logan's and had financed much of their structure. The effort behind the insult almost impressed me. I carried the box outside. Gary toasted my departure. Logan asked whether I needed gas money and laughed before I answered. Mom said, "Do not come back when adulthood gets hard." I placed the box in my trunk, took out my phone, and photographed everything. The banner. Mom beside the grill. Gary holding his beer. Logan filming. Grandma watching from a lawn chair. The cake. The bun beside my car. Mom frowned. "What is that for? Your victim scrapbook?" "No," I said. "For later." Then I drove away. They cheered when I turned the corner. I cried 40 minutes later at a gas station outside Murfreesboro, not because I regretted leaving, but because some part of me had still expected Mom to stop the performance before it became permanent. Serena answered on the first ring. "Where are you?" "Gas station." "Safe?" "Yes." "Do you need me to talk or listen?" The question itself felt like care. "Listen." I told her about Dad's name, the banner, the starter kit, the bun, and Mom's smile. Serena remained quiet until I finished. Then she said, "They threw a party because they believed your usefulness would stay after your body left." I looked toward the highway. "It won't." "Good." The first 3 days were silent. Mom posted a photograph beneath the banner with the caption, Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable an adult child who has mistaken comfort for entitlement. Comments praised her strength. Church friends wrote, "Boundaries are blessings." A venue employee wrote, "Proud of you, Deborah." Logan posted a shortened barbecue video with cheerful music. He edited out Gary's comment about Dad and the hamburger bun hitting my car. His caption read, "Mom finally chooses peace." The video received thousands of views because public cruelty performs well when labeled empowerment. I did not respond. I saved everything. On Monday, Magnolia House's scheduling platform suspended premium access because the main company card declined and my backup method had been removed. The assistant could still see basic reservations, but not detailed floor plans, rental inventories, or automated vendor reminders. Mom called the software company and discovered she had never updated the billing information. At noon, an insurance broker emailed that the liquor liability certificate for the December events remained incomplete. I knew because Mom had added me years earlier as the administrative contact. I forwarded the message to her without comment. At 2, a florist asked where the revised Christmas wedding quantities were. I forwarded that too. At 4, Logan texted, "Whatever you changed, change it back." I replied, "The accounts now use the payment methods and administrators belonging to the business." He wrote, "Stop being insane." I did not answer. Tuesday, a linen supplier placed future deliveries on hold because of an unpaid balance. Wednesday, the propane company required payment before filling the outdoor heaters. Thursday, a bride complained that Mom had sent an email saying, "If rain scares you this much, perhaps December was the wrong month for a wedding." Normally, I would have rewritten that sentence into something professional and calming. This time the bride received it. She forwarded it to her planner. The planner paused 2 referrals. By Friday, Mom had called 9 times. Her first voicemail sounded irritated. "Audrey, there is confusion about the booking system. Call immediately." The third sounded soft. "Honey, I think your personal card may still be connected somewhere. We need to untangle things together." The seventh sounded frightened. "The heated tent company says the deposit has not been secured. Samantha's parents are asking questions. Please call before people misunderstand." People had misunderstood for years, but only in Mom's favor. I remained silent. Gary called drunk and said the venue employees would lose Christmas hours because I was being vindictive. Logan called sober and said his wedding was not the place for me to prove a point. Grandma Marjorie left a voicemail about bitterness damaging women's faces. No one said the barbecue was wrong. No one asked whether I had arrived safely in Charlotte. No one asked where I was sleeping. Samantha did. She sent a message 6 days after I left. I saw the full video from one of the neighbors. "Were they really throwing food at your car?" "1 bun. Logan told me it was staged and you were laughing." "I was not. Did you know about the party?" "No." "Why did you take a photo?" "Because I knew the story would change." She waited several minutes. "It already has." Samantha asked whether I had been managing wedding operations. I told her I had helped but had never agreed to work the wedding officially. She said Logan described me as his behind-the-scenes wedding coordinator and claimed I preferred that role to being a bridesmaid. I was never offered a place in the wedding party. The typing bubble appeared. "He said you declined because you dislike dresses." "I own dresses." "Audrey, who was paying the tent deposit?" "They asked me." I said no. Logan told my parents it was already covered by a venue partnership. "Ask him for the written partnership." Samantha did not reply that night. The next afternoon, Julie Pierce, her mother, called me. "I'm sorry to contact you directly." "It's okay. I need to ask one question. Has your family been using your personal money to support Magnolia House and the wedding?" "Yes." "How much?" "I do not know the exact wedding amount because I declined the tent deposit." "Across the business and household, a significant amount." "Did Samantha know?" "Not from me," Julie exhaled. "Thank you." She did not ask me to rescue the wedding. That distinction mattered. 1 week after the barbecue, Logan arrived at my apartment without warning. He had obtained the address from Grandma, who found it on a box I had mailed. I opened the door but did not invite him inside. He looked exhausted. Mom says you have a master password. There is no master password. The booking plans are missing. They are in the business drive. We cannot find them. Use the handoff document. What handoff document? The one I sent Mom Friday night. He stared. She did not mention it. That is not my problem. Samantha's parents are threatening to move the wedding. They are allowed. You know what this will do to Mom. What did the barbecue do to me? He rolled his eyes automatically, then stopped because he finally heard himself. That was stupid. Stupid? Cruel. Fine. It was cruel. Why did you participate? Mom wanted everyone there. Why did you film me? I thought it would be funny. Why? Because you always act like you're better than us. Meaning? You have systems for everything. You talk like a manager. You make Mom feel incompetent. By fixing her mistakes? By remembering them. There it was. Documentation felt arrogant only because forgetting protected them. Do you know how much I paid? Mom says you're exaggerating. Do you know? No. Then why defend her version? He looked toward the parking lot. Because if your version is true, my wedding should not exist like this. Honest enough to hurt him, the wedding can exist. It may not exist at the scale everyone promised. Samantha will leave me. Because the tent costs money? Because she thinks I lied. Did you? Silence. Logan. I told her Mom and Dad had invested in the venue. Dad is dead. I meant before. There is no investment account. I thought Mom would figure it out. You thought I would. His face tightened. Can you come back for 3 weeks? Just through the wedding. We will pay you eventually. I almost laughed. No. Audrey. No. You'd let your own brother's wedding fall apart? I am allowing the adults getting married to plan a wedding they can afford. You have the money. That does not make it yours. He stared at me. So this is revenge. No. Revenge would be me canceling contracts. I am refusing to donate labor and credit to people who publicly called me a burden. Mom will lose the venue. Then Mom needs professional management. You are professional management. I am not hers. I closed the door. My hands shook afterward. Boundaries do not always feel powerful. Sometimes they feel like holding a heavy door shut while someone you love keeps pushing from the other side. The business continued deteriorating, but not because I sabotaged it. Magnolia House had always been weaker than the photographs suggested. Without my cards, labor, reminders, and vendor relationships, the weakness became visible. Mom hired a temporary coordinator who quit after 4 days because information was incomplete and Mom contradicted instructions. One December bride moved her reception to a hotel after losing confidence. Another stayed but reduced services. The heated tent company released Logan's date when no deposit arrived. Samantha's parents offered 3 options: relocate the wedding to a hotel ballroom within the existing budget, reduce the guest list and use the barn without the tent, or postpone. Logan called all 3 humiliating. Samantha called them realistic. Their first serious argument happened in front of both families. She asked why he had told her the family venue and decor were free. He said family businesses did not charge family. Mom agreed. Then Julie asked who would pay staff, utilities, rentals, flowers, heaters, insurance, catering, cleanup, and damaged inventory. Nobody answered. Samantha asked whether Audrey had been expected to pay. Logan said, "She always helps." That sentence changed the wedding. Samantha postponed it. Not canceled. Postponed. She told Logan she would not marry him until they could discuss money without treating another person as an invisible solution. Mom blamed me. Logan blamed me. Grandma said Samantha lacked loyalty. Julie said, "Loyalty without information is just obedience." I heard that through Samantha weeks later and wrote it down. 12 days after the barbecue, Mom left the voicemail that began, "Whatever point you're trying to make, you've made it. She said the venue needed me. Logan's relationship was collapsing, employees were frightened, and Dad's legacy was being destroyed. Please turn everything back on, she begged. We can discuss payment after Christmas. There it was. Payment after labor. Respect after rescue. Apology after access. The order never changed. I did not call back. Instead, I finished the document I had started weeks earlier. I had been quietly recording my contributions since the heated tent argument because Mom's certainty frightened me. She did not merely minimize my help, she had erased it from her internal reality. I created a conservative timeline covering 3 years. Household contributions, mortgage shortages, property taxes, utilities, appliances, repairs, business software, insurance premiums, vendor balances, replacement inventory, payroll gaps, fuel, professional work, wedding planning hours, personal transfers to Logan, personal transfers to Gary, medical costs for Mom. I excluded ordinary gifts, shared meals, and anything that could reasonably be described as my own household use. The direct payments totaled $87,400. Unpaid professional labor, calculated at less than half my standard rate, added another $63,000. More than $150,000 of support from the woman whose departure cake said freedom for Deborah. I created a 38-page packet with summaries, dates, receipts, texts, and a final photograph of the barbecue. I did not intend to sue anyone or demand immediate repayment. I wanted one physical version of reality that could survive interruption. Thanksgiving provided the audience. Mom invited me 3 weeks after the barbecue. The message read, "Whatever has happened, your father would expect us to sit together before Logan's wedding. Thanksgiving at 4. Samantha's parents will attend. This is your chance to correct misunderstandings." Not apologize. Correct misunderstandings. Serena asked whether I planned to go. Yes. Why? Because they want me to lie in front of people. How do you know? Mom attached a statement. The statement said I had voluntarily moved to Charlotte for career opportunities, that the barbecue had been a mutually agreed joke, and that technical problems at Magnolia House resulted from an incomplete transition rather than years of personal financial support. It said I remained committed to assisting with Logan and Samantha's wedding because family differences should not affect sacred milestones. A signature line waited beneath my name. "You are not signing," Serena said. "No. Then why attend?" "Because Mom has spent my whole life winning inside rooms where she controls the story. I need to say no once where she cannot pretend she did not hear it." Thanksgiving at the Hale house looked beautiful. Mom had removed the banner, cleaned the garage, polished the dining table, and placed Dad's photograph beside an arrangement of autumn flowers. 27 relatives filled the living room. Samantha and her parents attended. Logan sat beside her, but looked as though 6 inches of silence separated them. Gary arrived sober, which made the barbecue cruelty harder to dismiss as alcohol. Grandma Marjorie wore a brooch Dad had given her. Several venue employees were present because Mom called them family. The seating arrangement placed Mom at one end, Grandma at the other, Logan and Samantha near the center, and me beside the kitchen doorway with 2 teenage cousins. "Why am I here?" I asked. Mom looked at the card. "We needed to keep couples together." "Of course." "Audrey, please." I asked one question. I moved the chair beside Samantha, who looked surprised but shifted to make space. Logan frowned. Mom whispered, "Do not start creating scenes." I looked around the room. I did not order a banner. Dinner began with Dad's photograph watching us. Mom asked Gary to pray. He thanked God for family bonds that survived pride and temporary confusion. I opened my eyes. So did Samantha. During dinner, relatives discussed Magnolia House carefully. A difficult season. Staff transition. Technology trouble. Wedding stress. Mom announced that Logan and Samantha were prayerfully reconsidering their December date. Julie corrected her. They postponed because financial information was not accurate. The table went quiet. Mom smiled. That is one perspective. It is theirs, Julie replied. Before dessert, Mom tapped her glass. We have one family matter to settle so everyone can move forward. She placed copies of the statement around the table. Audrey made a sudden career move, and the transition created confusion at home and at Magnolia House. Hurtful things were said on all sides. Social media made everything look worse. This statement clarifies that the barbecue was intended as humor. Audrey was never financially exploited, and she will help complete the wedding once a new date is selected. I read my copy. I will not sign this. Mom remained standing. Read it first. I read it when you sent it. Then you understand it protects Dad's legacy. It protects your story. Audrey. The barbecue was not agreed humor. Gary rubbed his face. Logan looked down. Grandma said, everyone laughs differently. I was not laughing. You took the photograph very calmly, Mom replied. Because I knew you would say this. I opened my bag and placed the packet on the table. The sound of paper landing was small, but the room changed. What is that? Mom asked. The difference between your story and mine. She stared. Do not turn Thanksgiving into business. You brought a statement about the business. This is about family. Then why does your statement mention my financial support? Her face tightened. I passed the summary pages to Julie, Samantha, Grandma, and the venue bookkeeper seated nearby. Over 3 years, I paid $87,400 in direct household and Magnolia House expenses. I provided more than $63,000 in professional labor using a deeply reduced rate. I covered mortgage shortages, utilities, property taxes, software, insurance, fuel, payroll gaps, replacement inventory, and wedding planning. I also paid Logan's rent twice, his business registration fees, and several personal expenses he promised to repay. Logan said, that is not relevant. Samantha turned toward him. How is it not relevant? She chose to help. Did you repay her? Silence. Mom grabbed a copy. Her eyes moved down the first page. These numbers are inflated. Which number? She pointed. You cannot charge consulting rates for helping your own mother. I did not charge. That is the point. Then it is not debt. I am not demanding payment. I am correcting the word freeloader. Gary looked at the total and went pale. Audrey, some of these fuel transfers were temporary. 3 transfers across 4 months, never repaid. I was working for Magnolia. And Mom was supposed to pay you. She couldn't. So I did, Grandma said. Counting love makes it ugly. You are right. Love should not require accounting, but public humiliation built on false accounting requires correction. Mom slammed the packet shut. You lived in my house for 3 years. I paid household expenses and business debts. You did not pay market rent. If I had paid market rent to a stranger and kept my money and labor away from Magnolia House, the venue would have lost insurance, missed payroll, and defaulted on the mortgage 2 years ago. That is speculation. The bookkeeper spoke quietly. It isn't. Everyone turned toward her. Her name was Beth, and she had handled part-time records for 9 months. When Audrey stopped covering gaps, I found accounts I didn't know were supported personally. The business is not profitable at the current event volume. Mom stared. Beth, you asked me to attend as family, not to discuss private finances. Then why is Audrey's support described as imaginary? Silence. Samantha opened the packet and found messages from Logan. What is this? He leaned closer. The screenshot read, Audrey, cover Mom's software this month. I need her calm before I ask about the wedding bar. Another. Can you front the photographer? I'll repay when the sponsor deal hits. Another. Do not tell Samantha the tent isn't secured yet. Mom says it'll be handled. Samantha looked at him. You asked her to hide things from me. I was trying to prevent stress. By creating a wedding we could not afford? We were going to afford it. How? He glanced toward me. That was the answer. Julie closed her eyes. Mark Pierce said nothing, but his expression hardened. Mom began crying. Audrey, why would you humiliate your brother like this? I did not write his messages. You saved them. Yes. Normal people do not keep evidence against family. Normal families do not organize public expulsion parties for the person paying their bills, Gary whispered. She's right. Mom turned on him. Do not start apologizing because you are scared. He looked at me. I said Michael would be ashamed. The room became still. Yes. I knew it would hurt. Yes. I was drunk, but I knew. Specific. Why? He stared at the table. Because Deborah wanted you to react. Everyone was waiting. I wanted the laugh. Thank you for telling the truth. He began crying. Mom said, "This is grotesque." No, I replied. The grotesque part happened under the banner. Grandma defended Mom. Your mother lost her husband and carried that business alone. She did not carry it alone. She gave you a home. And I helped keep the home. A daughter should not speak this way. A grandmother should not watch a child be publicly humiliated and call it discipline. Marjorie's face went white. I did not know food would be thrown. You stayed. Silence. Mom shifted tactics. What do you want? There it was. The question controlling people ask when they cannot imagine you no longer want a transaction. Nothing. You brought 38 pages to Thanksgiving and want nothing? I want the lie to stop. Which lie? That you carried me while I contributed nothing. That the barbecue was love. That Magnolia House failed because I became vindictive. That Logan's wedding was financially secure. That Dad would have approved. Do not speak for your father. He once told Logan I was not the emergency department for choices he made on purpose. Logan looked toward Dad's photograph. He remembered. Mom's face changed. Michael also believed family sacrificed. He believed sacrifice required truth. You think you knew him better than I did? No. I think you use his absence because he cannot disagree. She covered her mouth. The room remained silent. I placed the photograph of the barbecue beside the autumn centerpiece. Mom in white linen. Gary with beer. Logan filming. Grandma watching. The banner above Dad's garage. This is what you called love. Mom looked at the picture. For the first time, her performance dropped. I was angry. You planned a banner. I felt judged in my own home. Because I would not borrow $13,000 for Logan. Because you acted like the business belonged to you. Only the liabilities belonged to me. That is not fair. Exactly. Samantha pushed her chair back. I cannot plan a wedding inside this. Logan reached for her hand. She moved it. Inside what? A family where every promise is funded by the person you insult when she asks questions. Samantha, you told me Audrey declined being a bridesmaid. I thought she would. You told me the tent was sponsored. We had interest. You told me your family owned Magnolia without debt. It is family property, Beth said quietly. The mortgage is in Deborah's name and the payments are behind. Mom glared at her. Julie stood. We are leaving, Mom said. Please do not let one emotional presentation destroy their future. Julie looked at the barbecue photograph. Their future will not improve by requiring Audrey to finance a lie. Samantha faced Logan. I am not ending the relationship tonight, but there will be no wedding until every financial account, debt, and promise is clear. Logan looked at me with hatred. Are you happy? No. You wanted this. I wanted you to stop treating me like an account with no person attached. You always think you're better than us. No. I think my answer can be no. Mom pushed the typed statement toward me again. Sign it. You have made your point. No. Then at least return for 90 days while we transition. No. The employees will suffer. Hire professional operations management. We cannot afford your rates. You could not afford my free labor either. You simply delayed the cost. She began sobbing. You would watch your mother lose everything. The old hook entered my chest. For years, her possible collapse had been my automatic emergency. I looked at her, the woman who raised me, buried my father, held me when my childhood dog died, taught me to braid hair, and later ordered a cake celebrating my expulsion. People are rarely one thing. That complexity makes boundaries harder, not less necessary. I am not watching you lose everything, I said. I am watching you discover what everything cost after you drove away the person paying for it. You are cruel. Maybe distance will keep me from becoming crueler. What does that mean? No contact for 6 months. No business messages. No requests through relatives. No showing up at my apartment. Emergency medical information can go through Serena. After 6 months, I will decide whether personal communication is possible. Mom stared as though I had announced her death. You are cutting off your mother. I am removing myself from a system that called me family only while I carried it. And Magnolia? Not mine. Dad built it for us. Then care for it honestly. I slid a separate envelope toward her. Inside were names of an accountant, an insurance broker, a small business restructuring consultant, a bookkeeping service, and 2 venue managers available for contract work. These are resources. That is all I am offering. You expect me to hire strangers? Strangers charge openly. I stood. Logan said, if you leave, do not expect to be invited when Samantha and I finally marry. Samantha looked at him. Do not use my wedding as a threat. I picked up my coat. Mom whispered, your father would hate this. I turned toward his photograph. Dad would hate the banner. Then I left. Magnolia House did not collapse overnight. Real businesses rarely disappear in one dramatic scene. It shrank through consequences. Mom hired an operations consultant for 6 weeks, then fired him because he required weekly financial reviews. Beth resigned after Mom blamed her publicly for old records. 1 delivery truck was sold. The floral rental program ended. 2 weddings moved. Several remained and were completed successfully after Mom reduced services. The heated Christmas wedding became a simple spring ceremony at a hotel. Samantha and Logan stayed together through counseling for another year, then separated when Logan continued describing financial questions as disloyalty. Samantha later wrote me a letter apologizing for enjoying the fantasy while accepting my exclusion. I thanked her. We did not become friends, but honesty closed the interaction without poison. Logan blamed me for the breakup until Mom began directing the same contempt toward him that she had once concentrated on me. Without a designated freeloader, every person remaining became eligible. She criticized his income, his unfinished plans, his inability to save the venue, and the humiliation of his postponed wedding. He moved out of the guest house she had allowed him to use rent-free. 6 months later, he called me. I understand now. What? The house becomes colder when she needs someone to blame. Yes. I helped make it you. Yes. I knew you worked. I knew you paid things. I just liked being the child who did not have to. Honest. Thank you. Do you forgive me? Partly. Can I visit? Not yet. Okay. That answer showed more growth than pleading would have. A year later, we met for coffee. He had taken a salaried position with a construction supplier, lived in a modest apartment, and stopped posting lifestyle advice. I thought visibility meant value, he said. Mom taught us that. Dad tried to teach something else. I didn't listen. Neither did I enough. You listened more than me. I stayed too long. Why? Because every crisis made me feel important. He looked surprised. You liked helping? I liked being needed. I confused it with being loved. Were we using that? Yes. Did you know? Not clearly. Would you help me financially again? No. He laughed sadly. Fair. We rebuilt slowly without money. Not best friends. Not holiday. Post-siblings. 2 adults learning to speak without one performing success and the other performing rescue. Gary apologized sober. He joined a recovery program after losing his delivery work and being asked to leave Grandma's house. His first apology centered his shame. I declined it. His second arrived a year later. I used Michael because I knew his death was the deepest place I could hurt you. I wanted the crowd to laugh at the same person so nobody would look at me. I am sorry. I replied. Thank you for naming it. We remained distant. Forgiveness changed what I carried. It did not create trust. Grandma Marjorie never offered a fully honest apology. She mailed family objects, recipes, photographs, and religious cards about healing. She said she regretted how the cookout was interpreted. I stopped responding. When relatives told me she was old, I said age did not make access compulsory. She died 3 years later. I attended the funeral, sat near the back, and left before the family lunch. Some relatives called that cold. I called it the level of contact I could sustain without betraying myself. Mom resisted the longest. During the 6-month no-contact period, she sent 37 messages through new numbers, relatives, venue staff, and church friends. Each message proved why the boundary remained. The mortgage is behind. Logan is depressed. Your grandmother's blood pressure is up. Christmas is coming. Your father would not want this. I found your blue sweater. Every object and emergency became a key she tried against the door. I extended no contact another 6 months. Magnolia House eventually sold part of its acreage to cover debt and refinance the remaining property. The venue continued as a smaller operation, hosting 20 weddings a year rather than 60. Mom moved from the brick house into the renovated farmhouse on the venue property because maintaining both had become impossible. She posted online that she was choosing simplicity after years of carrying everyone. I stopped reading. My life in Charlotte expanded. The hotel group contract led to referrals. I formed a consulting company called Clearline Operations. My clients paid deposits before work began. Emergency calls carried emergency rates. Every project had written scope and communication hours. No client was allowed to call exploitation family. I hired an assistant after 18 months, then 2 consultants. I bought a small bungalow with a screened porch and a narrow garden. The guest room contained a bed, not an obligation. Serena lived nearby with her husband, Marcus, and their toddler. They invited me to holidays because they wanted my company, not my organizational skill. The first Thanksgiving at their house, Serena handed me a glass of wine and said, "You are forbidden from fixing anything. The serving schedule is inefficient. Sit. The turkey is resting too early. Audrey." I sat. The meal arrived 20 minutes late. Nobody died. That lesson was more important than it sounds. Competence had become armor, identity, and admission price. Learning to remain worthy while someone else mishandled dinner required practice. I began dating a civil engineer named Noah Grant 2 years after leaving Franklin. He was divorced, thoughtful, and unimpressed by performative helplessness. On our 4th date, I told him about the barbecue. Not every detail. Enough. "What did you do when you saw the banner?" he asked. "Took a photograph." "Smart. That's all?" "What else should you have done?" People usually ask whether I confronted her. You were facing a party organized around making your reaction entertainment. Leaving was the confrontation. I fell in love slowly because safety initially felt suspicious. Noah asked before helping. He accepted no without becoming wounded. When he stayed at my bungalow, he contributed groceries without turning it into a statement. When I became ill during a client trip, he drove 3 hours, brought soup, and did not mention the effort afterward. "You don't keep score," I said. "Should I?" "No." "Then why are you surprised?" I cried. Healing often looks embarrassing from the outside. My mother's first truthful letter arrived almost 3 years after Thanksgiving. She wrote by hand because she knew I would delete an email too quickly. "I held the barbecue because I was angry you had stopped allowing me to define what your help meant. As long as I called it a few groceries and typing, I could believe I was still the capable mother and business owner. Your refusal to fund Logan's tent forced me to see that many of the things I called mine depended on you. Instead of thanking you, I needed witnesses to agree you were the burden. I wanted your humiliation to protect me from mine." I stopped reading and walked around the bungalow for several minutes. Then I continued. "I knew the banner was cruel. I knew Gary's comment about Michael was cruel. I saw the bun hit your car. I did not stop it because every person laughing made me feel more certain that my version was true. When the business began failing, I first missed your money, then your labor. Much later, I understood I had lost my daughter before either of those things disappeared." No request followed until the final paragraph. "I am asking for one meeting in a public place. If the answer is no, I will not contact you again for 1 year." Specific boundary. I waited 4 months. Then I agreed. Mom looked older at the cafe in Asheville where we met. Simpler clothes, no white linen, no perfect hair. She arrived alone. Thank you for coming. Why now? Because Magnolia survived without becoming what I imagined. Meaning? It became smaller. And? I did too. She smiled sadly. I spent my whole life believing being impressive protected me from being pitied. After Michael died, the business became proof I was not a widow people should feel sorry for. Your competence threatened that proof. So you hid it. I renamed it, typing, helping, living at home, freeloading. She closed her eyes. Yes. Why did you exclude me from Logan's wedding? Because if you were a bridesmaid or family guest, I had to admit you were not staff. If you were staff, I could keep using you. Brutal honesty. Why the party? I thought if everyone saw me reject you, nobody would ask why I needed you. Silence. Do you love me? I asked. She cried. Yes. Did you love me then? Yes. Then what good was the love? She covered her mouth. Not enough. That's not what I asked. It did not make me safe. There it was. Love does not automatically create safety. What do you want now? A relationship with no business, money, housing, or rescue. Can you accept a small relationship? I have to. Can you accept that Noah may meet you slowly? Yes. Can you accept never using Dad's memory to pressure me? Yes. Can you accept that I may leave if you minimize the barbecue? Yes. Do you expect forgiveness? I hope for it. I do not expect access because of it. Better. We began with 3 phone calls that year, then a lunch. No holidays. No overnight visits. Mom learned to ask rather than announce. Would you like to see the venue after renovations? No. Okay. The first time she said okay without punishing silence, I waited 2 days for the next message. It never came. Later, I chose to visit Magnolia House. The property looked different. Smaller parking lot. Part of the lower field sold for a residential development. The barn remained. Dad's workshop had become a storage room. Mom had saved his coffee mug. Would you like it? She asked. Yes. No condition, no speech. In the garage of the old house, before it was sold, she found the metal brackets that had held the banner. She placed them on a table. I kept thinking I should throw these away. Why didn't you? Because throwing them away felt like pretending. What do you want me to do with them? Nothing. Good. She discarded them herself. We never held a dramatic reconciliation at the venue. No social media announcement. Mom removed the barbecue post quietly and replaced nothing. When someone commented beneath an old photograph that tough love had saved her daughter, Mom replied, "No, I publicly humiliated Audrey after benefiting from her support. Her leaving forced me to change." I saw the comment through Logan. She did not send it to me for praise. That mattered. I did forgive her eventually, though forgiveness did not restore the old family structure. I never worked for Magnolia House again. I never loaned Mom money. She never received a key to my bungalow. We saw each other several times a year. Some meetings felt tender. Some felt awkward. Once, she criticized my kitchen cabinets and immediately caught herself. That sounded like the old me. It did. I'm sorry. Small repair. Noah and I married 5 years after the barbecue. We held the ceremony in Serena's backyard, not Magnolia House. 46 guests. Mom was invited as my mother, not planner, owner, or hostess. She asked where I wanted her seated. Front row, she cried. Are you sure? Yes. Thank you. Logan attended alone and helped Marcus carry chairs after asking. Gary was not invited. Grandma had died. Before the ceremony, Mom entered the bedroom where I was getting ready and handed me Dad's old pocket knife. He wanted you to have this, she said. How do you know? Because he told me years ago, and I kept thinking Logan should receive it. Honest even in the gift. Why didn't he? Because your father said you were the one who knew a tool was not useful unless somebody respected what it could cut. I laughed through tears. That sounds like him. I'm sorry I kept it. Thank you for returning it. She did not ask for a hug. I offered one. During the reception, a cousin asked whether Mom had ever imagined the freeloader would own a consulting company and a house. The table became silent. Mom said, Audrey was never a freeloader. I called her that because admitting how much she carried would have changed how people saw me. The cousin looked embarrassed. Mom continued eating. No performance, no expectation. I would reassure her. That was accountability living in public, where the original humiliation had lived. My marriage to Noah did not complete me or prove Mom wrong. I was already whole in the bungalow, eating takeout with Serena, building Clearline, and learning that quiet did not mean a crisis was approaching. Noah joined a life rather than rescuing one. We chose not to have children, partly by circumstance and partly by decision. Mom struggled with that information, but did not call it selfish. Logan eventually married a woman named Priya in a courthouse ceremony, followed by dinner for 12. He paid for it himself. Before setting the date, he called me. I want you there as my sister, not planner. Will anyone ask me to fix the dinner? The restaurant has staff. Good. I attended. During dessert, Logan raised a glass. I spent years thinking Audrey's competence existed to protect me from consequences. I'm grateful she stopped. I said, This is an unusual wedding toast. Everyone laughed. Priya squeezed his hand. He had changed enough to accept being known without appearing exceptional. We remain close enough to call and distant enough that neither person assumes access. Gary left recovery twice before staying. We exchanged occasional holiday cards. His final note before moving to Arizona said, I still hear myself using Michael's name at that barbecue. I hope one day the memory hurts less for you. I wrote, It does. That does not mean it mattered less, he replied. Understood. That was enough. Clearline grew into a 6-person firm. We helped family businesses establish roles before resentment became payroll. I developed a policy that every relative working inside a client business needed written responsibilities and compensation, even if payment was delayed. Owners resisted. I told them, unpaid work becomes invisible quickly, and invisible work eventually becomes anger. I did not tell the barbecue story during sales presentations. My trauma was not marketing material, but it informed the systems. Sometimes a daughter sat quietly during a meeting while parents praised a son with a title. I noticed. I asked who handled scheduling, client follow-up, vendor problems, or payroll. Often, the daughter raised her hand. Naming labor changed rooms. That became part of what I built from the experience without pretending the harm had been necessary. I would rather have had a mother who thanked me before a banner. Growth does not retroactively make cruelty wise. Dad's pocket knife remains in my desk. The barbecue photograph remains encrypted on my computer, though I no longer open it. For years, I believed keeping it meant refusing to heal. Then I understood evidence can retire once self-trust returns. I do not need to stare at Mom's smile to remember what happened. She remembers too. Logan remembers. Gary remembered. The neighbors who laughed may tell themselves it was harmless. Their understanding no longer controls mine. The photograph served its purpose. It prevented the day from being rewritten into a playful send-off. It also captured something. Nobody in the image understood the final second before the person supporting their system chose herself. Last Thanksgiving, Noah and I hosted at our bungalow. Mom came from Franklin. Logan and Priya drove from Nashville. Serena, Marcus, and their children arrived early. 2 Clearline employees joined because their families lived far away. 13 people crowded around mismatched tables. Before dinner, Serena suggested a photograph. I automatically stepped toward the phone. Noah took my hand. Timer. I can take it. You're in it. Mom heard and looked down. The old family photographs had often placed me behind the camera, while captions said everyone was together. She quietly moved a chair into the middle. Audrey, sit here. Why the middle? Because it is your house. I sat. The first picture caught Marcus reaching for his son. The second caught Logan laughing. The third caught Mom looking at me instead of the camera. That became the photograph we kept. Nobody posted it publicly. Consent was asked. Everyone agreed to a private group message. Beneath it, Serena wrote, "Nobody here is staff." I laughed so hard I nearly spilled wine. After dinner, Mom helped carry plates. "Where do these go?" she asked. An ordinary question, not an assumption. Counter is fine. "Do you want help washing?" "No." "Okay." She returned to the living room. Years earlier, her no would have meant rejection, and my no would have meant disloyalty. Now it meant I did not want help washing dishes. That is what healing often becomes. Ordinary words losing the hidden punishment attached to them. People who hear my story focus on the collapse of Magnolia House's wedding calendar, Logan's postponed marriage, the 38-page packet, or the moment Mom saw the total. They call those revenge. They were satisfying in the way truth can be satisfying after years of distortion, but satisfaction was not the victory. The victory was not becoming rich while they struggled. The venue survived. Mom survived. Logan found steadier work. Nobody became homeless. Nobody lost everything. The victory was learning I did not have to wait for disaster before declining responsibility. I could say no before resentment. I could leave a phone unanswered. I could send resources instead of becoming the resource. I could attend a wedding as a sister, or decline entirely. I could accept Mom's changed behavior without pretending the old relationship should return. I could forgive Gary, and still keep distance. I could love Logan without financing his potential. Most importantly, I could value my competence without offering it as the price of belonging. I had spent years believing usefulness was my strongest quality. It was one quality. I was also funny. Though my family rarely noticed because emergencies are poor audiences, I loved old movies, garden herbs, quiet mornings, bad roadside diners, and driving without a destination. I disliked ballroom dancing and overly scented candles. I wanted partnership, but did not need marriage to validate adulthood. I was more than the woman who caught deadlines before they became disasters. The people who loved me safely learned those things because they spent time with me when nothing needed fixing. That became my definition of family. The people who remain after the invoice is paid. The people who notice when you are behind the camera. The people who ask whether you want help and accept the answer. The people who do not need your humiliation to strengthen their version of themselves. My mother did love me. I believe that now. She also became unsafe inside her shame, entitlement, and need to appear capable. Both truths can exist. A parent's love does not erase the damage of how that love was expressed. A child's boundary does not prove hatred. Sometimes distance is the only place love can exist without continuing to consume the person offering it. Mom changed because the consequences became unavoidable, but her change did not create a debt requiring me to restore every privilege. She became a person I could meet for lunch, call on birthdays, and invite to my wedding. She did not become my employer, financial dependent, housemate, or unquestioned authority again. The smaller relationship was not punishment. It was the size that safety could support. The banner said, "Adulting starts now." The message was cruel, but it accidentally described what happened. Adulthood began when I stopped believing family titles gave other people unlimited access to my labor, money, grief, or home. It began when I drove away without performing the breakdown they had planned. It began when I let Magnolia House experience the cost of professional work rather than rescuing it for free. It began when I understood self-worth was not convincing my mother I had been carrying everyone. Self-worth was putting the weight down even if she never admitted it existed. She eventually did. That was meaningful. It was not necessary for the boundary to be right. So here is the question I would ask anyone listening. Because people still divide sharply when I tell them I eventually allowed my mother back into a limited part of my life. If your mother organized a public party to call you a freeloader while secretly relying on more than $150,000 of your money and unpaid labor, allowed relatives to mock your dead father and throw food at your car, then years later gave a specific apology, accepted permanent financial boundaries, and genuinely changed, Would you slowly rebuild a smaller relationship? Or would the moment she turned your humiliation into entertainment permanently end her right to call herself your mother?